Sorry. This is Al Newman and Ben here with the Upper Deck Report. We're at the Buffalo Tap here in Savage, and the topic of interest right now is Joe Mauer, of course. We're here in Minnesota, and Joe Mauer is keen. Dealerships, TV commercials. We see him all over the place, nationally and locally.
Speaking of dealerships,
Sure.
this is so ridiculous. My mom wants to buy a car from Mauer Chevrolet just so it can say Mauer Chevrolet on the back of her car.
Well, that's what they're counting on.
And
working?
sadly, it's working.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's
She's
come
had
to
American
around here.
cars that have had to put transmissions
Sure.
and all these other big things, and she still wants to go buy an American car because it would say Mauer,
Mauer
Chevrolet.
Ladies and gentlemen across the podcast, you now realize how strong the last name Mauer is in the state of Minnesota. I mean, they're
Huge.
You go from the sideburns to now he's got the new hairdo going.
I'm a little jealous, to be honest with you, of that. I got a receding hairline. I can't.
Yeah.
That's why I wear a hat all the time. So can't really compare with that.
Well, getting down to business with Joe Mauer, the Twins hastily put him on the disabled list, a 15-day DL, because from what they said, he's catching flu-like symptoms and it's causing soreness within his body that's affecting his catching ability. Buy it or don't buy it, Ben.
I buy it, but at the same time, I think there's more to it. I think it's the fact that he's had a slow start, and I think it's also because it is because of that slow start. It hasn't played very well, and I think if they give him some extra time to just kind of get ready, get his legs going again, I think this is only going to benefit him long term throughout the rest of the season. Kind of like when he had that breakout year when he won the MVP 2 years ago. He took the whole month of April off, and look how well he played. I'm not saying he's going to do that again. But I'm just saying that with this extra time off, I think it could benefit him throughout the rest of the season with not just him catching, but him actually DHing on days that he does not catch. I think the key for Mauer is I think he's got to play almost every day this year. I don't think it has to be behind home plate.
Sure.
But I think on days that he is not catching, I think we have to seriously consider putting him at DH. One, because he's getting paid all this money.
Sure. He's a franchise player.
Yep, he's expected to hit home runs. And two, I remember you always say this, Tom Kelly's motive, you always play at home. You rest on the road. People are coming out to Target Field paying a lot of money
to
this
see
year
Joe Mauer.
And on those Sunday games, he's normally not there. I have friends who have season tickets with partners, and they say, we don't want these Sunday games.
Right.
Because Mauer's not in there, and
playing.
a couple other guys won't be playing it, and you can't blame them.
Right.
So I think he's got to be in there almost every day, and I think this time off will just benefit him throughout the rest of the year.
Well, as a former third base coach with the Minnesota Twins back in the day when Joe first came up, one of the things that I saw with Joe, and at the time, he was our starting catcher. We had a third baseman, Corey Koski, who was the third baseman for the Minnesota Twins at the time, was approaching free agency. Mauer used to stand over there with Mike Redmond at third base, and they'd take ground balls. I'd be the one hitting them fungos. And I saw his footwork around the bag over there at third base, on the backhand, going to his left. Now, I can't honestly say I saw him coming in on slow rollers because batting practice was going on. But I know as far as fielding the ground ball, first step quickness, and angles to the ball, I think Joe Mauer has the athletic ability to make that transition from catcher to third base. He wouldn't have to deal with the bruises, all the foul tips off his feet, off his shoulder blades, the hundreds and hundreds of throws. We always talk about pitch count. Well, for every pitch that a pitcher throws, Joe Mauer throws that ball back to those particular pitchers. So that's added wear and tear on Joe Mauer. So a position change to me, if I need to be the leading proponent, although I'm no longer in the organization with the Minnesota Twins, I would be the first one in line to sign that petition for Joe Mauer to move to third base. Now, that move, whether it's done or not, what would happen with Valencia? Either he's trade bait or he has to show enough athletic ability to move to the outfield or to second base to stay here in Minnesota.
I think there's no way that we trade Danny Valencia. I think because since Corey Koski's left, we've been searching for that answer at third base.
Joe Mauer.
And I think we've
8-year contract, $184 million.
If we're taking Mauer,
I think we found our third base.
I think if we take Mauer out of the equation for a second, and you look at Valencia, he's the only guy we've had at third for the past probably 5-6 years who's actually done something there consistently. We had Punto had a pretty good year, but kind of fell off the map after that. I don't see them trading Valencia at all. I don't know how mobile he is around the outfield, but I don't think they should really change. Mauer should change positions, and here's why: we've seen a lot of stars who played in the field who ended their careers as a DH. A couple examples: former Twins, Paul Molitor, Dave Winfield.
Sure.
Very, very good defensively at their positions.
Careful now. Are you trying to tell me that Joe Mauer is already a Hall of Famer?
No. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Okay, and this is Al Newman and Ben Nyber here from the Upper Deck Report, live from the Buffalo Tap. No breaking news here, but no. I understand what you're talking about.
And I think the other thing you're going to have to look at is this team going to stick with Justin Morneau long term? And if they don't, I guarantee you that's where Mauer is going to go because he's got a great glove, and I think he'd be great at first. I think Valencia is the answer at third.
I understand.
Realistically speaking, if we're going to keep Morneau and they have to move Mauer, there's no way they don't put him at third, and they'll find a place for Valencia, the outfield, wherever they're going to put him. I think if he does go to third, you'll probably see Valencia go to left field, and you'll probably see Delman Young shift elsewhere.
Shift over to the right, let Kubel DH.
And that would probably make the most sense. But I think that's where I'd look at it. Is I think if he would eventually move to first or DH, it depends on how long this team keeps Kubel around.
But Joe's got 3 batting titles.
He does. He can hit the ball.
When you got 3 batting titles, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. If I'm a manager, that means you're in the lineup. 3 batting titles, umpteen batting Golden Gloves, Gold Gloves, I should say. Joe Mauer is a gamer. We're not trying to knock his athletic ability. We're not saying that he's rather soft. Although there have been some former teammates that have called him out on his toughness. I don't question the guy's toughness. All I'm saying is athletically, he's outgrown the catching position. Although there have been some tall catchers. Carlton Fisk caught many a game behind home plate. But Carlton Fisk was a different body structure. Tall, slender, but his legs were thick. More sturdy than Joe. Joe is an athlete. And guys that are athletes, lean muscles, muscle mass is what Joe has. He doesn't have the bulky leg muscles like most catchers that you see that are of size. So for me, Mr. Mauer changing positions is something that General Manager Billy Smith, Director of Player Personnel, Mr. Mike Radcliffe, as well as Ron Gardenhire, sooner or later are going to have to face this issue. That this kid's got to be on the field. You paid him to be on the field. You still got 7 more years on that contract. And I'll be honest with you. If it was anybody else, if this was Torrey Hunter, man, the rain of fire would be coming down. If it was if it was Justin Morneau, the rain of fire would be down. He's not on the field. He's not healthy. It's a wasted contract. Yes, Joe's a local guy. Yes, your mom wants to drive a Mauer Chevrolet. But that Chevrolet's got to be able to run. And for that Chevrolet to run, I think it should be over at third base.
Yeah, and I think you talk about outgrowing the position. You know, our current first baseman, Morneau, did the same thing. You know, he was a catcher. He outgrew the position.
With me in rookie league,
they found a different place for him. And I think it's not an if, it's when it'll happen.
Yeah.
And I think you're gonna see it a few years down the road because let's face it, what kind of catching depth does this organization have?
We don't have any. Well,
exactly.
And that's the whole tip of the iceberg. Before we finish up, the catch-22 for the Twins is they've made 2 trades. And it reminds me of something that happened with the Minnesota Twins. Paul Sorrento was a first baseman playing behind another hometown boy, Ken Herbeck. And to do the kid a favor to let him have a career, the Minnesota Twins traded him to the Cleveland Indians. What do you think happened that first day of that trade? Herbeck got hurt. Okay? So now the Minnesota Twins thinking that, Joe Mauer has already had his injury, last year's injury, that he was healthy enough, and they had a backup, Mr. Butera. Morales was the hitter. Don't forget that little run they made late in the year. I believe it was 209, 208, 209. Jose Morales, little switch hitting catcher, was a key cog with some key hits.
He hit 340 that year.
Yes, he did. Now, your number 1 prospect coming through the minor leagues, number 1 or 2, Mr. Ramos is traded for Mr. Caps because of last year's activity. So there were 2 catchers that the Twins had before Valencia became this third baseman that he was, that finished third in the voting.
Have you seen how well Ramos is hitting this year?
Very much so.
About 330 right now. Just tearing it up over there in Washington. I mean, not saying that they shouldn't have made that trade because it is taking care of one problem that we do have. But it is interesting how sometimes when you do trade away depth at a position, how it can come back to bite you later down the road.
For sure. This is Al Newman and Ben Nyberg here at the Buffalo Tap with the Upper Deck Report. We're going to sign off here and send it back to the radio side. See you shortly.